we have our honored guest has arrived also, so we can start this meeting. I'm going to make no predictions about how long it will take, though. All right, welcome to the advisory committee meeting of Thursday, May 22nd. We have a few items on the agenda tonight. We have a public hearing on warrant article 2. There's more collective bargaining agreements for us to review. There is a IT department appropriations transfer to discuss. And then there are 2 warrant articles, which we may discuss. There's an opportunity to get our vote on warrant article 25 aligned with the select board. And then there was warrant article 30, which was tabled when I wasn't here, but for which we may wish to take off the table and make a recommendation. If there's anybody, members of the public, who would like to weigh in on any of those topics, drop your name in the chat and we will call on you. And I don't know that there are any members of the public who are not here to actually participate in the other discussions. So I think we can go right on to, we can turn the floor over to Anne to, we'll start our public hearing on the new agreements.
Okay, thank you very much. Anne Braga, HR Director for the Town of Brookline. So before you tonight, you have 4 collective bargaining agreements. One for the Teamsters, which represents the dispatchers in the Public Safety Business Office, and then 3 divisions of AFSCME, the main AFSCME employees, which are DPW, administrative, clerical, and maintenance employees throughout other departments. The library division of AFSCME, which represents the paraprofessionals and professional librarians, and the school traffic supervisors, who cross our students across the streets and do parking control. Each of these agreements is for a flat 2% for no other change in the collective bargaining agreements, and represents a total of $331,397. $331,397, and covers approximately 250 employees.
And the crossing guards are with the Teamsters, right?
The crossing guards are with AFSCME. The Teamsters represent the dispatchers in.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that we've got 2 unions here.
Correct.
Are they all for 4 years?
No, it is, each of them is for a 1-year agreement for fiscal 25. And that is to bring them basically up to current, so that we're negotiating forward and not backwards.
So all 4 of these are retroactive?
Correct. They're for fiscal year 25 only.
Any other questions? Okay, I heard a sound from Harry, but
yeah, sorry, I didn't realize my voice. So I'm looking at these. It's 2% for a year, this past year or the year that we're actually kind of still in, and I see no other changes whatsoever. And
that is correct. We offered them a 2% straight wage increase to bring them current and to be able to move forward. In the case of AFSCME Maine, we have to work through the rest of the class and pay study that Public Works had gotten a compact grant for looking at those positions and look at the ripple effects that are related to that. So that will impact what agreement we have moving forward for those folks. And then for library and school traffic supervisors, as well as Teamsters, we made the offer similar to what we did with the engineers. And this is consistent with what police received as their wage adjustment for fiscal 25, just the wage adjustment, not for the other issues, and matches what's available in the collective bargaining reserve.
Got it. Thank you.
Jocelyn?
Thank you, Dennis. So I'm not seeing the MOU in front of me, but can you remind me of the year that it applies, not fiscal year, but the calendar dates that it applies to for the Ask Me Maine?
Ask Me, all of the contracts, all of the agreements cover July 1st of 2024 through June 30th of 2025.
Okay, because I guess I'm more interested in what doesn't appear in the Ask Me Maine contract rather than what does appear in it. I mean, I think all of the unions got 2% across the board. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so presumably in view of the town's proposal to implement this Casella contract, which would privatize trash collection, there must have been impact bargaining for the loss of 9 union jobs. Is that correct?
That was part of the earlier agreement, separate from Maine collective bargaining, regarding the fact that while the services for sanitation were going to be contracted out, none of the sanitation employees would lose their job or have any reduction in wages.
No, I understand that, but 9 union positions were lost. So what did the union receive in exchange for? And I'm asking you this now because I actually asked the union and they referred me to you. So my question is, what did the union receive for the loss of 9 union jobs?
They moved the calendar.
What they received is that no employees were laid off, and any of the employees who were remaining with the town would, if they were in a position where they moved over to highway, that the compensation was different for the role that they had, they would be red circled at their previous wage in sanitation.
So just so I understand the benefit of the bargain, in exchange for losing 9 jobs, 3 employees were allowed to stay in their employment in Brookline. 2 of whom are going to be performing sanitation roles, as I understand it. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
That is correct.
Thank you.
If there were additional employees that stayed, because we did have at least one retire. If we had additional employees who stayed, they would have been put into roles in highway or another division of public works.
Okay, but there are 2 remaining employees who are going to continue to do sanitation work.
Recording in progress.
Correct.
Correct? So that's interests me that is considered a bargain, but in any event, thank you for answering my question.
Are there any other, oh, Mark?
I'll withdraw my comment.
Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, then I think we're ready for
You're
a
in.
motion, which,
Anyone is me then.
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
I'm
I
sorry.
think I just muted you. We'll take a motion for favorable action on the collective bargaining agreements for AFSCME and the Teamsters as outlined in the memoranda from Anne Braga.
Can we
Dennis,
take them
did we
separately,
end-
Dennis?
Yes, we can, if you would like.
I would like to take the asking Maine separately.
AFSCME
Because-
Maine or each of the there's,
I would just like to vote separately on the Ask Me Maine
Okay.
agreement.
Dennis, did,
fine. So,
The other 3
Yes.
can be batched if you like.
I'm sorry, what were you going to ask, Christine?
did we end the public hearing?
Sure. Let's end the public hearing.
I just want to kind of keep it organized that way. We advertised a public
Yep.
hearing.
The public hearing is now closed. Are there any comments for our debate? I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
That's okay.
So let me just split this. So it'll be favorable action on the collective bargaining agreement for AFSCME Maine as outlined in the memorandum. uh, from Ann Braga, and then this will be AFSCME. Well, I forgot how we have to, it's the other, is for remaining AFSCME.
That would be STS or school traffic supervisors and library.
STS and AFSCME library
And then the
and
Teamsters.
Teamsters. Great. Okay, so we'll start with the AFSCME main as per Jocelyn. Can I get a motion for favorable action on the AFSCME main collective bargaining agreement?
Yeah, so
I'll
moved.
move.
All right, and now we're going to go to our vote. And I don't know who is here. So, Michael Berger? Not here. Ben Birnbaum, I think, is not here yet. Harry Wars,
Yes.
Cliff Brown,
Yes.
Anthony Buono. May not be here. John Doggett,
Yes.
Catherine Florio,
Yes.
Harry Friedman,
Abstain.
David Mark Goldstein,
Yes.
Neil Gordon,
Yes.
Susan Granoff,
Yes.
Harry Grossman,
Yes.
Kelly Harderbeck, I
Kelly
think is
is
traveling.
traveling.
Elisa Jonas,
Yes.
Janice Kahn. May not
I'd be
be.
traveling.
Alec Lebovitz,
Yes.
Carol Levin. Not here. Pam Lodish. See here. Jocelyn Murphy,
No.
Donnell O'Neill. Perhaps not here. Linda Olson Pelkey,
Yes.
Mark Penzel,
Yes.
Fran Perler,
Yes.
David Pollock. May not be here. Lee Selwyn,
He's not here.
right? Chris Westfall.
Yes.
All right. And if I missed anyone, this would be a good opportunity to speak up. Otherwise, by a vote of 14 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstention, we're going to recommend favorable action on the AFSCME main agreement. Can I get a motion for favorable action on the remaining memos, AFSCME, STS, and AFSCME library and Teamsters?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Is anyone planning on voting differently this time?
I am, Dennis. I'll vote yes.
Okay. That was my guess, but I didn't want to presume. Okay. All right, so 15 to 0 to 1, assuming Harry is abstaining.
I am abstaining.
Okay, so that's we've approved all of those. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you all.
And Chris, if you could just take a look at the, take a look at the write-up for Article 2 and see if there's anything different we would have to edit, so we can submit a supplement. That would be great.
Yes.
Charlie and Fung, who wants to drive the IT appropriation request?
I can tee it up for Fung and let her
Okay,
let her
you.
add anything. Okay, good evening, advisory committee. Thank you, Dennis. I'm Charlie Young, Assistant Town Administrator for Finance, here with a relatively small request from the Information Technology Department, here with Fung Yang, the IT Director. And last week, the Select Board approved this request for $2,000, well, total of $5,000 out of capital, so that $2,000 can go into data processing supplies and $3,000 can go into education and training. Because this comes out of the operating capital category, it requires additional approval by the advisory committee. This is a relatively small surplus that's been identified in the IT department's budget, and we think it's a reasonable use of resources to shift those towards additional training for staff and some additional network supplies. So Fung, if you want to add anything, feel free.
Sure. Thank you, Charlie. That's a very good summary. Hi, everyone. Feng Yang, Chief Information Officer, Information Technology Department. So I just want to add one thing. The reason for this late request, I apologize for the late request. And the reason is that every June, in the past 10 years, we have been able to send staff to the cybersecurity training at MS-ISAC, which has been funded in the past by Department of Homeland Security, URC region. That funding, we were just told that is not available anymore. This is part of a lot of the federal budget cuts that's trickling down to us. So since we have the surplus that Charlie mentioned, I would really very much like to still send at least one staff member to this very valuable cybersecurity conference. And so that was the main reason why I have for this fund transfer request. So thank you. Thank you for your consideration.
Great. Questions or comments from the committee?
None.
All right,
Wait,
then.
I'll ask a question. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So you're sending someone to a training, but the funding is not going into the training category. So there was another shift that happened to the network supplies, but it's only going to send this person to the training?
No, it's both. But I was saying that, one of the main reasons for the transfer for that training education piece is because of the federal funding cuts that happened really recently. Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, we would have planned for it and I would have done it earlier, but that's why it's late. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm kind of dense. So what is a network supply?
So these are, like for instance, we have a lot of network closets. There's a lot of network supplies. So this one, we have UPS for many of them. So the battery for UPS tend to, after a certain period of time, they would, die. So we constantly need to replace them because we have them in all the schools, all the town facilities. So that's primarily this is what that's for.
Okay. And do we know why it was under budgeted for? Like, did you just go through more than you thought you were going to, or was there some other reason?
Sometimes the battery, well, some of them, when they were putting at a specific time, then, there's a specific lifetime. So from time to time, we'll have more replacement than others. And sometimes it's hard to actually tell when that battery is going to be bad, as you can understand. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I think that's it, Dennis.
Okay. So will somebody make a motion for favorable action on the IT department fund transfer?
So moved.
All right, I am going to share my screen. Harry Boers,
Yes.
Cliff Brown,
Yes.
John Doggett,
Yes.
Catherine Florio,
Yes.
Harry Friedman,
Yes.
David Mark Goldstein,
Yes.
Neil Gordon,
Yes.
Susan Granoff,
Yes.
Perry Grossman,
Yes.
Elisa Jonas,
Yes.
Alec Lebovitz,
Yes.
Jocelyn Murphy,
Yes.
Linda Olson-Pelkey,
Yes.
Mark Penzel,
Yes.
Brand Perler,
Yes.
and I believe Chris left.
No, I'm still
so-
here,
oh,
so
you're
I'm
still
voting
here.
yes on this.
Okay, all right. Sorry, thank you. So 16 in favor, none opposed, none abstaining. Don't spend all that money in one place, Fung.
Thank you so much for your help. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Thank you,
Nice.
Charlie. All right, we have two other things on our agenda for possible items on our agenda for tonight. Warrant Article 25, which is the resolution urging the Massachusetts legislature to act to pass the Climate Change Superfund bill, which we voted favorable action on by a vote of 15 in favor, to oppose with 5 abstentions. Was also approved 5-0 by the select board. However, their motion differs from the motion that we agreed in one and only one way, which is that the select board added this language right here in bold.
Can you make that a little bigger?
I'll do my best. 1 second. Is that big enough? Shall I make it bigger?
That's good, thank you.
Okay. So the chair Green added, provided, however, that Brookline Town Meeting does not support section 2T of said new chapter 21P of the general laws relating to the requirement that structural iron and steel used in any public work contract be produced or made in whole or substantial part in the US from the initial melting stage to the application of coatings, for the reason that said subsection is not germane to the bill and would place significant financial and other burdens on such public projects in Brookline. And we have an email in our packet from John Harris, which shares the chair's explanation, which had to do with actually, I don't want to try to pretend that I really understand what his argument is.
It's just a statement. He's aligned with the changes,
Yeah.
and that's the motion that they'll put forward.
Yeah, thank you. So we have the option of revising our recommendation to be favorable action on the motion that the select board passed, or keeping our previous recommendation, and having 2 motions at town meeting, or having no recommendation at all. We can do anything.
I'll move the amended language, although, I prefer to have 2 versions at town meeting, so we have something to do. But
well, as long as
I'll
you're
move
willing
that
to speak
language.
to it, then all right, go ahead, Neil. It sounds like we have a question on the table before we go to
Yeah,
vote.
so are we not having a separate vote on reconsideration? Are we just gonna go right to take up the difference?
The reconsideration is generally done relatively soon after the original vote. So I was going to take a motion to replace our recommendation, to amend our recommendation.
Okay.
And that would
so
be a
let me-
single vote.
All right, so let me just start the discussion then.
Okay.
So this particular resolution, the warrant article, speaks to a specific piece of pending legislation on Beacon Hill. And town meeting was asked in this resolution to support, endorse, use whatever word was actually in the warrant article, this legislation. What we got from and then it goes on to say, if it passes, that the town clerk should send a copy of the resolution to our delegation, to the House Speaker, to the governor, and the Senate President. The select board has said, we love this, except for this part that we don't like. What exactly are they suggesting the letter to the broadly to the named recipients say, and what is it that we're asking those named recipients to do? Are we asking the delegation to file an amendment? Are we asking them to vote no? Are we asking them to vote yes anyway? How does this work? What is it? How do you send this letter and say, we support the legislation, but not this part? What are we asking them to do?
I think that's outlined in John's email.
I mean, only to the extent that that paragraph would be included in because the resolution simply says a copy of this be forwarded to the delegation. So that language would obviously be included in the copy, but it doesn't actually answer Neil's question, which is,
Do we want the governor to veto
would
it?
it have been better to say we would only like you to vote for this if such and such is true or whatever? I see your point, Neil, but but I don't think I mean, unless you're planning on making another amendment to this
I'm planning
article.
I'm planning on supporting the original motion. So
The original motion
I'm
isn't, the petitioner has changed their motion, so we would have.
Well, then I'd be happy to move on the part of advisory, a recommendation of favorable action on the motion as printed in the warrant, because I don't think we can reasonably make a recommendation to the legislature and to the governor that says, we like the bill, but we don't like this part. I think that the governor will have no idea what it is we're asking for. Do we want
So
the
I think-
governor to sign it? I say the governor specifically because the governor's not in a position. I'll go back to the reps in a sec. The governor's in no position to amend it. The governor can either sign it or not sign it. What is it that town meeting is asking the governor to do by sending this letter? And I think that the petitioner and the select board got this one wrong. It's an impossible ask, and it says nothing. And so I'll move a recommendation of favorable action on the article as printed in the warrant.
So that's not a motion. It's not, I mean, we already have a recommendation of favorable action on the article as is printed in the warrant. We
Right,
already
and we
have
can
that.
stick with no change.
So the only option on the table right now is Harry's motion to replace that with a recommendation of favorable action on what the select board voted. So I think there are two things on the, if Harry's motion were to fail, if your side were to prevail, then there would be two motions at town meeting, and there would be a debate, et cetera, et cetera. And if Harry's motion passed, then I guess you independently could go to Neil to move the original language.
Correct.
So David, Mark, go ahead. I'm just gonna follow you.
Article 25 is a resolution, so there's nothing for the governor to sign. We're just saying that we are basically in favor of some legislation which may change substantially between now and then, but we don't like this part of the legislation, so please take it out, basically. To me, it doesn't sound confusing at all. They're going to know exactly, the legislatures are going to know exactly what we're talking about, and they're going to vote some version, and then the governor will sign or not sign it. I don't see the issue.
Dennis, if I might.
Go ahead.
It's not like I didn't have a conversation with Tommy Vitolo, Representative Vitolo, on this particular subject. He, in fact, does not know what it is town meeting is asking for if the select board's version passes. He is a co-sponsor of the bill. He's already a co-sponsor of the bill.
But the resolution says that the town of Brookline urges the state legislature to pass this bill that's sitting in the State House. And all we're saying is, could you maybe take that one part out?
Well, it sort of doesn't say, could we maybe take this part out? The select board has objected to that part. So I go back to this rhetorical question. What is it that Tommy Vitolo and the other reps and our senator are supposed to do? Are we asking him to file an amendment? Or are we asking, he's a co-sponsor of the bill already, right? We're asking him, by the way, to support a bill that he already supports, which, take that for whatever it's worth. Is he supposed to file an amendment? And when that amendment fails, is the governor supposed to sign it or not sign it? What is it that we're asking?
Right. So I mean, I think you've made it very eloquent, your point very eloquently, and now, this
Thank you.
body can decide
I'll try not to be
whether,
redundantly eloquent.
right, whether it agrees with you, in which case we will keep our original recommendation, or whether it has decided to normalize, reconcile with the select board. But I don't think that we're going to we would, without the petitioner, certainly craft new language at this point. So I think those are the only two options on the table for us right now. Are there other questions or comments? Linda?
Golson Pelkey.
Thank you. I'm just gonna comment for what it's worth. I get Neil's point, and I agree with him, but it raises a larger question for me, and this is why I abstained on this the first time around. It kind of makes you wonder what the heck else is in this bill. Like, did we all go and read the entire bill? I didn't. I don't know what's in there. And that's why I'm going to abstain again. Thank you.
Well, I voted against the whole thing, partly for the same reason that Linda just raised. And my position at this point is a pox on all your houses. None of it makes sense. We don't know what's in it. It hasn't made sense from the beginning, and substantively, I don't know who's going to pay for this super fund. We were promised that it wouldn't be anybody with whom we deal, but we always end up paying in the end. None of this is coming out of anyone's pocket that they aren't going to try and re-get it from all their customers and everyone else. So I think it's for all the reasons that Neil has said, and for all the reasons that Linda has said, and for the reasons I've stated, this is just a bad idea to begin with. And it's almost performative. It's like it's a green measure that sounds great, but nobody really understands it. And we're the advisory committee. We're supposed to advise, and we should do so knowingly, with some knowledge of what we're doing. And I think, despite the fact that this is, quote, just a resolution, we're failing here. It's my
So okay, I can't raise my hand, so I just want to
Go ahead.
pick up on Harry's comment, which is, if we don't know what this is all about, then Harry's right, we can't advise. And does that mean we make no recommendation? We can't vote yes or no if we don't know what we're talking about.
Was that a rhetorical question, or are you proposing to?
Well, I'm happy to make a motion for no recommendation.
Are there any other comments?
Well,
Because then we can figure.
I'll throw two fingers into Cliff's. At this stage, if the select board didn't have a recommendation for favorable action on a modified article, I might agree with you. But given the support, the bill that's actually filed on Beacon Hill versus support the bill that's filed on Beacon Hill, except we don't like this part. This is the part where I'm not going to be redundant again and tell you how our legislatures and the governor will have no idea what they're supposed to do.
Alec?
I don't think it's an issue of the governor, because I think we don't know what it is the governor is going to be asked to sign, period. Because if the bill is still in committee and still going through the legislature, it could change dramatically. I read this as sort of like suggesting to Tommy, even if he's a co-sponsor, town meeting, who you kind of represent most of Brookline, is suggesting that you as a sponsor sort of amend the bill. That's the way I would take it if I were Tommy.
Alec?
I just wanted to ask a question about logistics, because we've already taken a position on the original petitioner's motion. So were we to consider a motion for no action now, I guess, would that be a motion for no action on the article as amended by the select board? And would we then be sending a mixed signal to town meeting that we had endorsed one version but not the other? I'm just a little confused on how this would work since we've already staked out a position.
Oh, I think we could explain it if we take a recommendation of no action at this point. I think we can explain. I'm assuming that our no action recommendation would be based on Neil's and Cliff's observations and Harry's observations about the content of this particular article. We're at this point, there is a petitioner motion which is going to be moved, which is the select board motion, and I think the options on the table for us are to keep our original recommendation, move favorable action on the select board recommendation, or move no action on warrant article 25 as a whole, or make no recommendation at all. Those are the four options before us. And depending on whether Cliff is going to make a motion for no recommendation, we'll figure out what the voting order will be.
All right, thanks, Dennis. And to that point, I would be comfortable offering a motion for favorable action on the select board's suggested motion that the petitioners have adopted. So
yeah, I mean, we'll do it slightly differently. It'll be a motion to, yeah, whatever. We'll figure that out in a second.
Brian Perler.
So I've talked to John about this, and the change in language was something that Bernard Green wanted based on his work in Tennessee, where there was something similar. And the proponents, the petitioners, don't quite aren't supporting or not supporting it. They agreed because they wanted to get support. And John has asked Bernard to discuss why he amended it the way he did. So I don't know if that helps anybody in their consideration of this.
All right, if that's everything.
Sounds like we should have had Bernard or the petitioners explain Bernard's thinking to us. So
John couldn't be here tonight.
I'm happy because, and I wasn't there for the vote, because the advisory committee has taken a position already on the article. I'm happy to withdraw the suggestion that we consider no recommendation, because that would probably be a little too convoluted to try to explain. So
okay, then what we'll do is we'll take a vote. It'll be moved by Harry Boris, seconded by Alec Lebovitz, to amend our recommendation on warrant article 25 to be favorable action on the motion offered by the select board. If that passes, that will become our recommendation. If it fails, our recommendation remains the recommendation of favorable action on the article as printed in the warrant.
All right, so I'd like to move a substitute motion, which is a motion of no action on the motion that will be moved at town meeting. That's the select board version.
Okay.
Isn't that just the same as voting no on what's on the table?
No, because we would still have our previous recommendation. So in that case, what we should do is, because we were going to change our recommendation. So if that fails, our recommendation doesn't change. In this case, if Neil's going to make that, if Neil wants us to have an opportunity to recommend no action on warrant article 25 as currently voted by the select board, then we would need to remove our original recommendation and have you know, and then have an up or down vote on warrant article 25, on a motion on warrant article 25. Right? I mean, we already have, this is the standard problem that we have when there's competing motions out there, and we're going to have a recommendation. We don't have a recommendation on each of the motions.
So Neil, is your intent to have, through what you're proposing as a vote, to in essence have no vote other than to say no on the select board motion?
So let me start with what's going to be moved at town meeting. If the petitioner moves the select board's version as the, as the main motion, right now the advisory committee recommendation is the original warrant article as printed in the warrant, right? If that's our recommendation, we would move that as an amendment to the select board version.
Right.
Right. And so if we don't change our recommendation, there will be a vote on the amendment, and the amendment either passes or fails. And then we would move on to whichever version becomes the main motion. Town meeting will vote on that. If we withdraw our recommendation and make no recommendation, then the select board version will be the only motion moved, and town meeting will vote on it.
Right.
Right. So we can, if we let me presume that, well, here are our options, depending upon the outcome of the vote. Dennis, tell me if this is correct. So our first vote, my motion, is to change our recommendation from favorable action on the article as printed in the warrant to no action on the petitioner select board version that will be moved as the main motion. If that passes, that becomes our recommendation. Or at least we'll vote on that as our main motion. If it fails, then we will vote on Cliff's motion to change our recommendation to no recommendation.
Cliff withdrew that.
Okay. All right. So it's a question of, at least right now, do we change our recommendation to no action on the motion that will be moved? If that fails, then we have a recommendation of favorable action on the article as printed in the warrant, and Dennis could entertain a separate motion to change that recommendation.
Wait, I'm trying to let's be less legalistic for a second. I'm trying to understand what you are hoping the eventual outcome is. Are you hoping that the eventual outcome is that the town meeting is voting up or down on the article as printed in the warrant? Or are you hoping that the article as printed in the warrant now fails? You know, or
No. I'm hoping in the first instance, my first choice, if the select board version is the only motion, then I want a recommendation to be no action on the select board version.
Right. But why? But it doesn't have to be the only version. Right now, there will be two. Right now, our motion will be an amendment to the select board's.
Not if we change our recommendation.
But what do you want us to change our recommendation?
Yes, I want us to change our recommendation to no action on the select board version, which would withdraw our recommendation of favorable action. Yes, if that needs to be two parts, then.
Well, I'm trying to.
Yes.
I'm still trying to.
Yeah. So let me say
do you personally want warrant article 25 as printed in the warrant to pass or fail? Do you personally want it to?
I don't start there. I start with.
But I'm asking you a question.
So
I'm asking you a question. What would you like to happen? Please tell me.
I am ambivalent as to whether that motion passes or fails. I'm happy to have the select board motion be the only motion moved at town meeting, which means, I think, two things for the advisory committee. Number one, I would like a recommendation of no action on the select board version and a withdrawal of our prior recommendation on the motion that if we don't move it, I don't expect anybody else will move it either.
So I think that I think the right thing for us to do then would be to take a vote to reconsider warrant article 25, which would remove our previous recommendation, and then take an up or down vote on warrant article 25 as now presented by the select board. That would make a lot more sense
I think
than
that
trying to do
Yeah,
replace
I
by
think that's-
substitution.
I think that simplifies our process.
So will someone move reconsideration of warrant article 25?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we will, and then we will take an up or down vote. All right, I don't believe, has anybody new arrived, Harry? Okay.
Yes,
so-
Anthony Buono has arrived.
Okay, so this is the question of whether we should reconsider warrant article 25, and that would remove our recommendation. Harry Bors,
Yes.
Cliff Brown.
I wasn't here for the first one. Can I vote on this one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Anthony Buono,
Yes.
John Doggett,
Can you come back to me?
or Catherine Florio,
Yes.
Harry Friedman.
Well, given my position of opposing all these things, I'm going to abstain.
Oh, I would think you would say yes to give you a chance to vote no on the new one. David Mark,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Elisa,
Yes.
Alec,
Yes.
Jocelyn,
Yes.
Linda,
No.
Mark. Is Mark here? Fran,
No.
Mark says yes.
Mark says yes. And is Crystal here?
No, I think she's gone.
Oh, we have a bare quorum now. All right, so now we have no recommendation on warrant article 25. So
I'm Dennis.
Oh,
I'm
sorry,
a-
John. Yes.
Yeah, I'm a no.
Thank you. Sorry about that, John. 12 to 3 to 1. We have no recommendation on warrant article 25. So now we will take a motion. Let's just take a main motion of favorable action on warrant article 25, select board motion. And if you agree with Neil, we will vote no on that. Then if you agree with the select board, you'll vote yes.
So moved.
Harry-
If this motion fails, that's a recommendation of no action.
Correct.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make it, yeah, no means no action on warrant article 25. Yes means yes on the new version of article 25. Harry Bors,
Yes.
yes, favorable action. Cliff Brown,
Abstain.
Anthony Buono,
Yes.
John Doggett,
Abstain.
Catherine.
Yes.
Don't hear yes, okay. Harry Friedman,
No.
David Mark,
Like last time, reluctantly, yes.
Neil,
No.
you're a no. Susan,
Abstain.
Perry,
Yes.
Elisa,
Yes.
Alec,
Yes.
Jocelyn,
Yes.
Linda,
No.
Mark,
Yes.
Fran.
Yes.
Okay, so 10 in favor, 3 opposed, 3 abstentions. We're recommending favorable action on the select board motion. I don't remember who wrote the original report on warrant article 25, but we will need to publish a quick supplement. And it'll be an interesting report to town meeting. Thank you. And now we can move on to warrant article 30, which I wasn't here for the original discussion of. So I'm hoping that at least, Harry, you can pick us up where we left off.
So the petitioners recognized the fact that the original motion was calling into existence, was calling for a committee that had dissolved to come back and do something. And I believe realized that that didn't make a lot of sense. So they have come back with what is basically a referral motion that the subject matter, I believe, of the prior town meetings, of the Neil Gordon, John Margolis warrant article be looked at by a new, Neil, is it a select board committee?
It's a select board committee.
By a new select board committee, and that this committee also look at the work done by the previous moderators committee on forms of government. Since at the end of the last meeting, we did not have this motion before us, we voted to table consideration. And so we have now taken it off the table, and the petitioners have come back with what I would describe as a forward-looking warrant article that the acting or the assistant town moderator, John Karen, has accepted as being kosher.
Okay, so with that, then Petitioner Rosenthal, if you would like to explain your new referral motion, and we can take questions for you.
All right, thank you. At risk of making a slight correction to what Harry just said, because I know he's always very informative and accurate. We actually thought Article 30 was okay, but it was the subcommittee that had trouble with resolve clause number 5 that I think would have been adequate, even if the committee dissolved. But to avoid that confusion, and also to not burden John Cameron with this, because he's been stuck with this with everyone else, all his mentors basically recusing. And so anyway, we switched it to a select board committee appointed by the select board. And other than that, Harry's description was quite accurate as to what we want, which is just to continue the work, look at what's been published, and take it on to another level of further work until next March, basically. And I'm not really going to get into the merits of all that. We did a 6-page, 5.5-page explanation that got finished today and sent in to town hall, as well as all of you. And frankly, I don't think it's necessary to get into that. I'm sure you don't want me to, but I do want to make a couple of just global comments. That other than what I said about the procedure, I was on this committee before some of you were born. I don't want to get into the numbers and the dates, but I've always said that this committee is the hardest working committee in town, volunteer committee in town government. And I still believe that. And I want to get back to something that Harry also said earlier. We're the advisory committee and we're supposed to advise. The real point here, and I'm addressing all of you, but especially those of you, I think it was 6, who voted against delaying this last week. And that includes, I think, some people who just want to have a city, and and then there were the 4 people from the subcommittee who I think might have been heavily influenced by Neil Wyshynski, who lobbied them to vote no action. But anyway, put that aside. The point I'm making is your business is advising town meeting, and through town meeting, the whole town. And the whole point of this referral is to give more information to not just town meeting members, but the whole town. And there's one part of our explanation that talks in a paragraph why the ballot process is not adequate to do that. And this is really designed for the sake of the voters. And there's no committee in town. Well, I guess the other one analogous would be CTOS, whose business it is to advise town officials and the town about town government. And lastly, the last point I want to make is I do apologize for all the material. A lot of the reports by the committee duplicate the reports that we put into the appendices. We put them in because everyone has a right to fact check the things we said, and to apply a more dubious aphorism than Ronald Reagan, I always say distrust and verify. And I hope you would distrust what we said, but then try to verify it. And I think that if you look at those reports, you'll see that our criticisms, both February 26th and today, carry weight. And this committee has more work to be done. And that's all we're asking for. This is for the sake of the voters. So I hope that even those of you who want a city, and I know there are some here, and I respect your views, I just disagree with you. I hope that you can advise town meeting and the voters as you're supposed to do to get more information. And then you can make your arguments next year if it's on the ballot. So I think that's about all I want to say. And I'm sure all of you know that I could go on at length. And I'm sure none of you regret the fact that I'm not going to.
Thank you, Marty. Comments, questions for the petitioner?
Put your name in the chat if you wish to make comments. David Mark.
Okay, thank you. I will say that this version seems a lot better than the version we had before. As a member of the committee, I'm kind of in an odd place where it was technically a conflict of interest to even talk about this, but since we dissolved ourselves, that conflict has kind of gone away. I will say that it was a dysfunctional failure of a committee. It was very uncomfortable being on it. There were several conversations off camera that just made it clear that it wasn't going to be a good outcome. I think that Linda Pelkey had a good point last time, where the original version made it look like we were asking for a do-over from the first committee, which is not what we should be doing. And I think that there were some areas, especially in the final report, where it was admitted that there were some critical areas that we did not cover, deliberately so. One was to look at and evaluate Brookline's current form of government and whether that could be improved. And the head of the committee deliberately would not go there, even though I asked him to. And there's some other areas that just have not been done. And there is a good point that we did not really go to what the original concept of the warrant article asked for. If there is another committee that is formed through this warrant article, I think that augmenting the work would be useful, but not going over it again. In point number 2 of what we have before us, it says, it further shall review and evaluate the work of the resulting and now dissolved committee. You're asking volunteers to go over what another volunteer board did and evaluate and criticize them, which I don't think is fair to the committee for the work they did, regardless of what you think of the work. I think it's insulting to the committee that existed and the work that they did do. And I think that nobody is going to want to volunteer to spend time to evaluate and criticize a former committee that no longer exists. So when we come to vote on this, I'm going to propose an amendment to remove review, evaluate, and. So it just says it further shall augment the work of the resulting committee. Because it might be worth looking at what else the committee didn't do and do that work, but it's certainly not going to win a town meeting if we're asking them to criticize the prior committee. That's just destined for a flaming defeat at town meeting. So I don't know how I'm going to be voting on the final version, whatever it is.
Thank you. Harry Friedman. You know, I'm sort of struck by what David Mark just said. I did attend a couple of the meetings of the former moderators committee. I, to put it kindly, did not think they did a particularly good job in either their analysis or how the meetings and the committee was run. You know, the CLA report on the schools came out the other day, and I attended the town school partnership, and I heard a little bit of the comments at the select board meeting the other night. And everybody is sort of saying, well, you know, we need to look at this in a positive manner. We can't place blame. We don't want to be looking like we're placing blame on anyone. And David Mark, just as I inferred it, sort of said the same thing. I don't have a problem placing blame when blame is due. The CLA report placed blame on certain portions of school administration, and I think should have implicitly, I think actually should have explicitly placed blame on the school committee for not being the watchdogs that they should have been and being as responsible for the mess at schools as anybody else. The Moderators Committee on Forms of Government did a wretched job, and I have no problem seeing blame put at their door because they're accountable for it. You do a lousy job, then I don't think you need to be treated like a 5-year-old. You know, it's like, oh, you know, let's look for the silver lining. We can't, you know, give you an inferiority complex. I think people will join moderators committees or select board committees, whether we blame people or not for the lousy job a prior moderators committee did. And that does not bother me. So I will not support taking off the second half of the resolution's call to action. And I will support the resolution as a whole. Thank you. Elisa Jonas.
David Mark, it wasn't clear to me why you wouldn't support a new committee, given all the faults that you seem to have ascribed to the initial committee, which would then have one report, which it sounds like you agree with Marty that it's not a unbiased report. Wouldn't it be better to have another committee that actually provides more balance? I'm just trying to understand why you wouldn't want to support that if your amendment went through. I understand your criticism.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it comes down to me to whether the next committee will be any better than the first committee. It depends in part on who appoints the people or appoints who gets put on the committee, and the next committee could be just as biased as the last committee. A number of people in the last committee came in thinking that town meeting as an institution was destined to be removed. We have to remove it. Nobody's in charge. They came out with wildly weird conclusions saying that the town meeting government depresses voter turnout. Town meeting government is inhibiting commercial development in town. The town meeting form of government, it just went on and on. And maybe the select board would find some neutral people who would actually do the work objectively and do that, or maybe like last time, the political views of the members will push the committee in a certain direction from day one. So that's why I'm not sure it'll be effective. I would love it to be. I would love to watch that committee do the work that was supposed to do in the first place. I'm just not sure that we're going to get people appointed that are going to make a difference the second time around any more than the first.
Just throwing this out, would it make any sense to have an amendment to for the select board to be required to either get a balance committee or a committee of
Hopefully they would
assert neutrality, or
hopefully they would try to do that. I don't think they're going to load the committee one way or the other, but I had higher hopes for the committee when it was first formed, and I didn't realize that there was it was going to be pushed the way it did from day one.
So Lisa, you all set, or you have more to say?
I get no. So you would not support just saying something within an amended portion of the motion to ensure that there's balance or neutrality on the committee?
I think whenever a resolution is passed on to either the moderator or the select board, there is an unspoken expectation that it's going to be balanced. We never say it explicitly because we have faith that they'll do the best they can to do that. And if we put something like that in, we're basically saying to the select board, we don't trust you to do it, so you better do it this time. I don't think that'll fly at town meeting.
I'm just trying to think what would make you feel, given what were the flaws of this last committee, what would make you think, yeah, this is a good way to go to balance out what happened at the last committee? So, yeah, okay. You're still wavering. Okay.
I don't have an answer. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Linda Olson-Pelkey.
Thanks, Harry. I guess I just have to push back on what my friend Harry said, because I was also very disappointed by the tone of the town school partnership today. I was there, and this you guys are all wrong about blaming us mentality feels not helpful. But there's a world of difference between a volunteer person who signs up for a committee versus a staff person in charge of managing finances for a massive budget. I mean, they're just worlds of different. So I don't think the analogy is really very apt. And I remember at the last time we discussed this, it was Alec who brought up the chilling effect we could get on people serving on committees if their work is critiqued and judged and deemed unacceptable. And I have this sad feeling. I mean, I guess if I had a lot more faith in people's intentions here, but my sense of it is if the committee was incredibly biased towards favoring town meeting, that we wouldn't be here talking about a do-over of the committee. So that makes me feel like the chances for this neutrality and balance and thoroughness, given that it's all due by next March, and we haven't exactly defined the scope of work to be more explicit than explore or evaluate, I think we could very well get the same kind of product. It could be biased in another way. And this idea that it's for the public, I wish that were true, but I'm asking you, how many members of the public do you think looked at that report? I don't think, I would hazard to guess it's almost no one. So you know, I don't think this is a big deal. I think if you guys all want to see another committee, you know, I guess it's no real skin off my teeth, but I do think it does have a chilling effect on people serving on boards and this critiquing and questioning. And I agree with David Mark that assigning people to critique the previous people's is just kind of bad blood. So I will probably once again either vote no or abstain. So that's all I have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Two finger to Neil.
If you don't mind, I'll defer to whoever's next and make a full comment. I was just going to two finger, then I'll put myself on the list. Take your pick. I just wanted to read the charge of the original committee. The charge of the original committee, and this goes to the new charge and balance, the balance amendment question, which I think we don't need. The charge was to objectively and fairly evaluating the positive and negative aspects of the various forms of government in Massachusetts. I think you can read into objectively and fairly evaluating. That's straight out of the Warren article that John Margolis and I, the resolution that was passed by town meeting. I think you can read into that the appointment of a balanced committee. That's my two fingers, and I just assume I'll put myself on the list if I want to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Harry Bors.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think David Mark's suggestion is actually a quite productive one. Not simply politically, but I think it gets more into the notion of an augmentation or a continuation of what has already been done. And I agree, I think it sets a dangerous precedent to begin critiquing the work of a board, commission, committee, whatever, that has put in a lot of work up to this point. And whether we agree with it or whether we don't, or whether it's biased or not, I think we want to run a real risk at taking that sort of critique approach. So I think Dave Mark, as I said, makes a good suggestion. I will note that I appeared before this committee, and also the thing that David Mark pointed out, which was interesting and listening to his comments, was that the committee itself admitted that, yeah, there were some other things that we probably should have looked at and worked on, but we simply didn't. So maybe this is the opportunity. I will say that I appeared before this committee. I went up there with Dennis, and I came away feeling that it was an opportunity to have a much more fruitful conversation, and that simply was not going to happen. I think at least the chair of the committee, as well-meaning as he may have been, and any biases one way or the other aside, I don't think was terribly familiar with the town meeting structure. And I think not having that understanding made it a little bit more difficult to know how to approach it or know how to open up and have an engaged, informative conversation. And I think that just sort of worked against the committee, regardless of how one person feels about a city or a town structure. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Elisa Jonas.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Linda, and I agree with Harry and I agree with David Mark. I think it's good to not critique, but just move forward. But Linda, you had mentioned that you didn't think that anyone in the public has read this report. I am sure that very few people have. However, if there is at some point something that people have to vote for, then they might start researching, hey, what does this mean? What does it mean for Brookline? And they Google it, and if they only have one report and that report only presents one side, and I have to admit, I'm mixed on what I would want, but I would want to see, hey, what are the strengths and weaknesses of each one? And if we only have one side, a report for one side, I think it does a disservice to the public. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else from the committee? Alec.
Thanks, Harry. And I'll just start by offering a disclosure that I am a member of the steering committee of the Brookline City Charter Campaign. And I'd like to apologize for not making that disclosure at our last meeting. I in retrospect, would have preferred to have done that. I want to just second a lot of Linda's comments. I really remain unconvinced that this is not duplication of public process. And I really worry about the empirical approach to data-informed policymaking. You know, having done research, I'm very uncomfortable with even the appearance of going back to the same question or going back to the well in search of a different answer that, to be honest, seems predetermined. And I also want to push back a little bit on the notion that the products produced by this moderators committee were completely one-sided. If you look through the materials published by this committee and the portfolio of reports they put out, I believe there's a report titled In Defense of Town Meeting or something to that effect, written by Sandy Gadsby. I mean, to say that only a single perspective on the form of government or the future of Brookline's form of government was presented is just not accurate. I also worry about the chilling effect. We discussed that last week, so I won't go back into that and repeat what's already been said. But I remain really uncomfortable with this proposal, particularly should there be a question on the ballot next year. This seems like a question that, in a sense, is bigger than our ability as town meeting to answer. The only way forward legally is through a democratic process driven by the voters, who will not only get to decide whether we have this conversation on a broader level, but will get to pick the representatives of themselves who will have that conversation and develop potentially a charter proposal, which could also maintain Brookline's town status with changes or propose a city charter. So I remain unconvinced. I appreciate the petitioners' efforts to craft a better product for town meeting. And I just say to Marty, you know, even though, as you said, we disagree, I respect your views and appreciate, you know, your engagement on this issue. I cannot vote for this. So I'll be voting no action on both the referral motion and the main motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil Gordon.
Yeah, thank you. So with respect to Linda's comment and Alec's comment, Linda first, I assure you that if this particular moderators committee was biased in the other direction, that there would be a pro-city objection to the committee in the same way that you're hearing it from the petitioners, and that there would be I don't want to say parade with torches. I'm not saying that, but I think there would be an equivalent pushback of the criticizing the committee that in fact proceeded with bias. I'll raise one other point, and that is that everything that is presented, and we hear this, and it is in the index of the committee where they talk about reports. Catherine Henshon has in her report, Catherine Henshon, Moderators Committee on Form of Government, but for the cover memo, final report, and the interim report, not a single report is the report of the committee. They were barely discussed by the committee. They were never voted. They were never accepted by the committee. They are all individual works that were presented in public forum. But as I said, they were not critiqued. They were not voted. They were not discussed in any significant way. And yet what we hear is that this is the work of the committee, which it isn't. Let me read my opinion, critical of the committee. I read the charge, right? And this is what I have to say of the committee, the Moderators Committee on Forms of Government. They ignored their charge. They ignored customary norms for committees of this type. Intentionally or otherwise, they flouted state law, and they did all of that with palpable anti-town bias. That's the committee. And I think that their work is fairly I'm not suggesting a total peer review. I think that their work is fair game and the criticism is fair game, and that someone can, a new committee, review their work so they don't have to redo their work. We're not asking for a do-over. Petitioners are not asking for a do-over. It is, you can't not review their work. And I think it's fair to see whether the conclusions reached by individuals in individual papers are evidence-based, and whether the conclusions they present, and they present the conclusions as if it's the work of the committee, which it's not, right? As to whether those are real or conclusions supported by the evidence they bring, I think that's fair game for a new committee.
Can I jump in there briefly, Harry?
Sure.
So what you're saying, Neil, is that a committee appointed by the select board should critique individual people's opinions, reports that they submitted?
That's not what I'm saying.
Because it sounded like what you were
No, it's not what I'm saying. I think that a new committee, right, should review the work of the moderators committee, right? Read the individual reports, right? And not dissect them, read them, right? See where the committee met its charge, where the committee didn't meet its charge, augment the work, and see what conclusions they reach, and see whether, in fact, the conclusions reached by the moderators committee are supported by the evidence gathered. I think that I think that's a fair charge for a new committee.
Well, presumably they would do so. Whenever somebody goes on a committee, they're going to do background research. So I would assume that would be part of it. But what it's asking here is that the individual people's papers will be reviewed and evaluated, which again is just it's just very disrespectful of people for the work they did. Even though I disagree with the work that they did, I don't think that's fair to them.
Fran Perler.
Okay, so in my short career in town meeting, I've been on a few committees, and I recently read the final report of this committee, which basically just talks about the process of the committee and says, here are a list of reports that cover the range of information by this half dozen or so or 10 people. And I agree with Neil and Marty that they didn't really come to any conclusions or provide any sort of document that a person who isn't a research scientist willing to read 12 different individual papers would come to. There's no, when we talked about town meeting, the pros were this, the cons were that. When we talked about city charter, the pros were this, the cons were that. Instead, this is how we did it, and here are the individual people's thoughts. So I think the committee was, in essence, a failure for not providing us or the public with any really readable, understandable analysis. And I also agree with David Mark that I think reviewing what the committee did is inappropriate or not fruitful, that I would rather see somebody taking the nuggets of what they've learned plus whatever else they can contribute and come up with a real report which compares and contrasts the pros and cons of everything. And I would rather see Marty's new committee suggestion do something like that rather than go back to school and do all the research. That's it.
Thank you. Susan Granoff.
Yes, thank you. So as someone who has been on a moderators committee, a select board committee, and who has chaired a moderators committee, I understand that sometimes you end up in a very different endpoint than what anyone thought you might end up with. Sometimes that endpoint almost seems predetermined by who gets appointed to that committee. And that's unfortunate because in a sense, it means that all of these very hardworking people are not going to actually do what they are being asked to do, because along the way, people simply reinterpret the charge in a way that isn't consistent with the purpose of the warrant article that created that committee and with what the town is depending on that committee to do. In looking at the wording of what is being voted on today, essentially what is being asked, and I think this is the part that David Mark may be concerned about, it shall, in addition to reviewing and considering the intent of the original resolution, which I think is a critical step, it further shall review, evaluate, and further augment the work of the resulting and now dissolved moderators committee. The question is, how do you define work? By work, I would define it as the total end product, as opposed to looking at the individual pieces of the reports. And I would say, well, did the committee define its work, its charge in the way that the original warrant article creating the committee and the charge that they were given was that directed them to? And I don't think in any charge were they asked to create an anthology of individuals' perspectives on the topic. Every kind of committee of this sort comes up with a consensus. And then there may be a minority report attached to it, but there needs to be a consensus that looks at the original charge and then point by point explains how this committee met that charge, and these are their findings, and these are the reasons for their findings. And I really think that the fact that there is this huge gap, if it continues uncorrected and voters are then asked to come to a decision, and the only thing that they are going to be able to refer to is a committee report that didn't do its job, the voters may not have any understanding as to where the gaps were, or the lack of knowledge of some of the committee members in the functioning of town meeting. They may assume that everyone on that committee is totally knowledgeable about how our current government works. And I think that it's critical that there be some report that that voters can refer to that has been written by people who have this knowledge. Because without it, we're doing a disservice. We're not merely presenting some information to voters by only presenting selective information that doesn't fully cover the topic. We're actually going to be providing voters with misinformation, because it will be having the approval of our town as being, well, this is the committee that we appointed and this is their findings. And without anything more, I think that it will be a huge disservice to the voters, because they rely upon us to identify whatever gaps there might be, the topics that were not covered, the important analysis that wasn't done. And if they don't have that information in a form that they can view as reliable, they're going to see it. Any points that people might make, they'll say, oh, it's just a political debate. And they won't understand that the information that will be referred to as the official report by the town's committee on this subject matter didn't actually do everything that they were supposed to do, and that there were many gaps that should have been filled in. So I think that we have a responsibility to have another committee that will fill in the gaps. And I don't see that there would necessarily have to be a critique of the individual reports, but rather a critique of the work of the committee as a whole, what the committee accomplished, what it didn't accomplish. How does this compare to its original charge? These are the gaps, and this is now what the new committee would try to fill in. So I don't see that necessarily in voting for this motion would necessarily mean that you have to critique the individual members, but rather the work product of that committee as a whole. So I feel strongly that this is a good motion, and I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Olson-Pelkey.
Sorry to be the person having to make this comment because nobody else is engaging on this topic. So I don't really quite understand Susan's point, because where in the process of the voters being engaged and the voters voting and the voters educating themselves do we see these reports being relevant? And I would say that there's two questions. As you know, there will be the question on the ballot of should we establish a charter change commission study group, and they will be given the voters will choose the members of that committee, and they will be given 18 months to study this topic and write a report and make a recommendation to the voters. And this is where the real guts of the information is going to be presented. Now, would it be helpful to have other sources of this information? Yes. And it's not just about the reports that we generate. I remember seeing a really excellent presentation from the Mass Municipal Association about the variety of types of government and the pros and cons. We had a panel discussion in the select board's hearing room. It was fascinating. I watched the whole thing. So there's plenty of other choices that people have for the information. And the first decision they have to make is whether or not they even want to engage in a process to explore this. And I would posit that they don't necessarily need an encyclopedic knowledge of all the potential outcomes to be able to decide whether they want to explore for the town the form of government that we have. So I just think there's a little confusion there about when the voters really need the information, when they will be making substantive votes, and when a different kind of report could be extremely relevant. So that's it.
Thank you. Neil.
Yeah, thank you. So we hear a lot, some tonight, and much from the city charter campaign, including on their website, of this fanciful notion of what a charter commission will do. First of all, it's an elected commission. The charter commission, or at least one of their members, is on record saying that they would likely endorse a slate. And so it's not an unbiased commission. There's nothing in state law that even suggests they have to study anything. State law is quite specific. They're not required to study anything. They're not required to engage in conversations with the public. They're required to have one public hearing only after they've reached a conclusion and are making a preliminary recommendation. That's the point where they're obligated to have a public hearing. And so I would suggest that the comments of what a charter commission will do is different, or shall do, is quite different from what a charter commission may do. And the charter commission may or may not do all sorts of things that are represented as the job of the charter commission. The reason that John Margolis and I brought warrant article 18 in November of yikes, gazillion years ago, 23, was to have a conversation and not a campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis, that appears to be all the members of the committee who wish to
All right.
ask or speak.
So let's give Marty an opportunity to, he's been waiting patiently, give him an opportunity to close this out before we move to motions.
Thank you. I may have been waiting patiently, but I knew I'd have to wait to the end. I basically wanted to make sure I got recognized. So I don't know if I was patient or not patient, but here I am. I do want to make some quick points. I'll try to be concise. A lot has been said, and I want to try to respond to about 6 things very quickly. First of all, I yield to nobody in appreciating everything David Mark has done for decades and on this committee. I don't think he missed a meeting. Every word that came out of his mouth was truthful, accurate, and I appreciate it. And he loves town government, and I thank him for it. Back to the word evaluate. I don't think it means criticize or critique. We've done the criticizing and critiquing. However, I just looked up a Google definition of evaluate. The first one that comes up, I think, from Oxford Languages, I don't know, it's identified that way, is form an idea of the amount, number, or value, assess. So I didn't, that word, I probably put it in here. It doesn't mean to critique. We've done the critiquing. We've done it in 10 pages in February and 6 more pages today. But that is not the point. I want to read one sentence from our explanation about that. Warrant Article 30, this is in the very first paragraph. Warrant Article 30 is not about the MCFG members, italicized, who ironically would not have been civically engaged in this topic but for a representative town meeting. Candidly, referral seems prospectively a no-brainer. So that's the point right now. It's not about the moderators committee, and that word evaluate wasn't meant as a critique. However, I would say this, I don't think David Mark has to recuse himself. The committee is dissolved, and if he would agree to vote, I would not mind the word evaluating being taken out. I don't think it adds that much. All right, let me just keep going. I'll try to be short on all and everything I know.
You have a deal on that.
I'm sorry?
You have a deal. I'll vote if you.
Well, I have no problem. I think the words are adequate without it. Review and further augment the work. I think that would probably be sufficient unless I'm missing something. You people are very professional about wordsmithing. I'm just a lawyer and I've been doing it for 50 years, but I think you people do it better than anybody. All right, next is there's been suggestions that another committee could be biased, and that I think there was a hint that that's an exaggeration about this committee. Let me just point out some facts that were in our original explanation and today's additional explanation. This committee had 7 people originally appointed by Kate Poverman. 4 of them, including Mark, Sandy, Elizabeth Childs, and Mark Levy, were very, what I call poster children for Brookline's form of government, and I think would have all supported the existing government. Unfortunately, Elizabeth had to resign. Neil Wyshynski, the former treasurer of the city charter group, appointed not 1 but 2 people to replace him, both from Brookline for Everyone, and they've been part of the 4-person pro-city majority that wrote the Pro-City Majority Report. And so that was the first indication of, I think, unconscious bias. I yield to nobody in admiring and appreciating Neil Wyshynski, but I don't think he put aside his unconscious bias. Secondly, as of February 26th, they had been in existence for 12 months. There were 4 sort of opinionated expert guests. All 4 of them were pro-city. They had no pro-town advocates. It wasn't until April that we managed to get myself and I, by pulling teeth, got Donnell and Al O'Neill to come as well. And that was after 14 months of their existence, the first pro-town advocate. So that's bias number 2. Number 3 is, as of February, there was not a single pro-town report. There were eight reports. About 5 of them were pro-city and about 3 of them were neutral. Those are in the original appendix. So there's no doubt there was unconscious bias, but that's really beside the point right now. The point is to move on. Next is, and the rest of the points are even quicker, I hope. The current reports of the committee, and this gets back to the point that Linda made, who's going to look at this. I think, and I guarantee you that if things were as is right now, or as they were in February, the pro-city people would be citing this report, and they would cite the 4-member report that's in there. It's 7 pages by 4 pro-city people. It's full of things that need further study, and it's counterbalanced by 3 pages by David, Mark, and Sandy Gatsby that are excellent, but also leave some things out. And however, the point there is that out of about 100 pages, there are 3 pro-town pages in there, their report. It's an excellent report, and it leaves things out, as we explain in today's explanation. The point about chilling people from volunteering on reports, I find that really, I hate to say it, I think it's laughable. The fact is that one of the things that's wonderful about Brookline, and it's the civic engagement that the pro-city people don't grasp, and the reports, their reports, the Jeffrey Berry puts in a report, is town meeting a culprit for civic engagement? The town meeting impedes civic engagement in Brookline. That's one of the most absurd things I've ever heard. But the point is that Brookline has fabulous civic engagement, especially because of our form of government. And even if this report were criticized by a new committee, it's not going to chill anybody. We in Brookline have thicker skin than being chilled by a committee being criticized. My last 2 points are that there's been talk about the ballot question. You'll see stuff in our explanation that ballot question is not adequate to educate voters. It will get 2 150-word pro and con views on the ballot question. And you all know how little 150 words are. And I'm guaranteeing you that Rebecca's group will cite that 4-person report. And it is not thorough. It needs work. It has things in it that I would have called in the Brookline High locker room a word beginning with a B and a second word beginning with an S. That's the critique, but that's not the point. It needs more work for the voters. And I think those are the main points I want to make, and I'm sorry to go on at such length.
Thank you. Harry, there's nobody else on the list, right?
No, there's no one else on the list.
Great. Okay, so we're gonna move on. I couldn't tell from that conversation whether there was an amendment being proposed by David Mark, or if there was a friendly, whether the petitioner was whether there was a different motion on the table.
So if you want me to read what I was going to propose, and then Marty can say whether that's a friendly amendment and save us a vote, I'm happy to do that.
Yes, please.
Okay, so and I don't know if you want to put the motion up for everyone to see.
Yeah, hang on a second. Ba, 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 ba. Can you see that?
A little bigger, please. Okay, so as you see in number 2, right there, it says it further shall review, evaluate, and further augment the work, et cetera, et cetera. I would propose it's just saying it shall further augment the work of the resulting and now dissolved committee.
So you're going to remove, you would remove,
Keep
so
shall,
you'll remove that further
yes.
and remove,
Yeah, it shall augment the work of the committee, right there. So keep shall and get rid of everything.
Okay. All right, Marty, what do you say?
Well, I was addressing the fact that I'd be willing to drop the word evaluate, but I think review is going too far. I mean, I think that just goes with augment. The point is not to dismiss it. The point is to use it and use it as a stepping stone to the next steps. And I just think that.
So that sounds like a no.
I'll say no to both. I'll say no to taking out both.
Okay.
I was flexible and evaluate.
That's fine. So let's just go to David Mark's motion.
I just want to point out, Marty, that as they're getting ready and they're reviewing the intent of the warrant article stuff, of course they're going to look at what has come out of it so far so that they don't reinvent the wheel. I just don't think it needs to be said in the way it's said because it makes it look like they're spending time having a do-over of what the first committee came up with, and I don't think we should be going there. That's why I'm proposing this.
All right. So on the table, we're going to have a recommend referral of the committee as per the petitioner's motion, and then David Mark is proposing to amendment. I'll just put this language in here. Change bullet 2 to
it shall
bullet 2 becomes it shall augment the work. Starts with
nice and simple.
Yeah. Okay. So we will first take up David Mark's amendment and then yes.
Neil.
Yeah,
Neil
thanks.
has a comment.
So I don't want I don't want to do this in the form of further amendment, but let me make this suggestion. I'm looking at this. I'm not seeing where further means anything, but I think there are 2 furthers in there. But if we talk about a select board committee, shall review and augment. I don't know how any new committee cannot review the work of the prior committee if it's expected to augment it. And I'm just going to suggest that we vote on language that says the first further is a further resolved, right? So it's further resolved that it shall review and augment. I'm not sure how this committee doesn't do that. So that would be my suggestion.
So part of this is how it's going to be perceived by the members at town meeting. When they're sitting in their chairs and reading this, how are they going to think of this wording? Okay, and I think it's pretty self-evident that whatever committee is created is going to not want to reinvent the wheel, and they're going to take a look at, all right, what did the other group do and what did they come up with? And I just, the way it's written, it makes it look like we're trying to have a do-over by criticizing the last committee's work. And since the committee's work was not voted by the committee, they'll be evaluating and criticizing individual people's work, which, agree or disagree, I think is bad form.
Linda Olson-Pelkey.
Thanks, Harry. I was just wondering, has any other board or committee or the select board or anybody voted on this yet?
Yes.
And what was the result of that?
Have you heard?
No, I don't know.
Well,
Go
I'm
ahead.
asking if I'm recognized.
Yes, go ahead. You can tell us.
The select board voted in favor of the original article before seeing, this has been filed just this week. They voted 3-1 to 1 a favorable action on the article as written, relying on that fifth resolve clause as being adequate. So the one, Michael Sandman, also on the city charter group, abstained, and John Van Scoyoc, who has praised their work as the committee's work as an A+, voted no action. So it's 3-1 to 1. May I respond to the amendments, Chair Doughty?
Let's see if there's any other comments, and then we can go to you.
Okay, thanks.
Are they going to reconsider, Marty?
I'm sure the motion, if I may answer.
I'm sure that they will when it,
if the
next
motion, they have the motion as of Monday and the explanation as of today or tomorrow. It's been filed. The explanation was filed today. So
Okay.
they will, I'm sure.
Yeah, I expect they will. Go ahead if you wanted to comment on David Mark's amendment, and then I'd like to move to votes.
Yeah, I really don't think any town meeting members are going to care about what we're debating right now. The only people who will care are some of the people on the moderators committee who took great offense at our criticism. We were called harassers, and one pro-town member, not David Mark, said, we're going to dissolve in part to end your harassment. I mean, there's a footnote in our today's explanation saying that, but we didn't want to name the person. But what we're doing right now, this nitpicking about taking out the word review as opposed to just merely evaluate. I mean, the defensiveness of the committee, and David Mark is on it, and he's a dissenting person on the committee, but he still is nervous about offending the committee. I just really find that word review to be exceptionally milquetoast. And it seems to me it's very hard to augment the work that's of a committee without reviewing the work. And evaluate, I didn't think was negative, and review is even less so. So, I mean, I just find it, I wish I could say I'm shocked. In another life, I might have been shocked that we're debating review and evaluate, in the sense that we might have to debate that at town meeting. It seems, well, I don't know, the best word I can come up with is a little bit mashugana. Some of you know what that means. So that's it. I'm not in favor of diluting it that far. I agreed to evaluate, but David Mark is going too far.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a vote on David Mark's amendment to the referral motion.
Fran just raised her hand.
All right, we're going to call on Fran, and then we're going to take a vote on David Mark's.
Sorry. I just want to sort of mention to Marty that I agree with David Mark that to say review and analyze is too in your face. And when you say augment, by definition, as you say, it's to review and analyze. And it's considering the smile on certain people's faces when the moderators committee dissolved before your amendment, your warrant article was discussed. I think the gentle approach of looking forward is the best, and augment includes review and evaluate without like hitting them over the head. That's it.
All right. Thank you. We're going to move to voting on David Mark's amendment.
We need to move the actual motion first, so.
We're going to take a motion to recommend referral of warrant article 25 as proposed by the petitioner, Mr. Rosenthal. Neil, maybe you'll make that motion.
Sure, I'll move that. I'll move Marty Rosenthal's referral motion.
Favorable
Okay,
act, right?
Yeah, favorable.
Yeah.
Because we don't want it to sound like we're voting to refer his referral motion.
Correct.
Alec Lebovitz, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Harry. Quick process question. Should the vote on the favorable action for the motion to refer fail, what then is our recommendation? Would we then need to take a vote on the actual motion itself, but the petitioners aren't offering a separate motion other than the referral motion? Is that correct?
No action.
So we'd recommend no action on the referral motion, and that would be it?
No action on 30, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so that would be accomplished. That'll be accomplished by this single vote on the referral.
Excuse me,
motion.
no.
I've
moved.
Go ahead, Neil.
I move petitioners, I move favorable action on petitioner's referral motion. If David Mark wants to offer an amendment to that, we'll vote on the amendment. If that amendment passes, then we'll vote on the advisory committee's main motion. If that amendment fails, we're going to vote on a recommendation of favorable action on petitioner's referral motion.
Yeah, I think that what Alec was asking is what happens if that fails.
Right.
That subsequent vote, that vote fails. But I think that at that point, we're going to have a recommendation of no action on warrant article 30.
Well, may I be heard on that? If referral fails, why can't someone move the original article?
Oh, they can.
Yeah,
yes. Yes,
if
go ahead.
referral
Stop.
fails, I certainly would if I'm allowed.
We will go. Oh, you can't move it to us, but somebody here will. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's start with does somebody second Neil's motion to refer?
I will second.
Okay. David Mark is amending. So this is recommend favorable action on the on Rosenthal motion to refer warrant article 30. Okay, DMG amendment is to adjust bullet point 2 as per our previous conversation.
What is the exact wording of 2 now, just to be clear?
Lisa put it in the chat, I believe.
It says, it reads, hold on a second.
It further shall
augment. Right.
Okay.
It's just, it further shall augment.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a shall augment, but okay.
No, just to be consistent, you need further.
Well, Neil wanted the further, so I will yield this.
Okay, it further shall augment the work of the committee. Okay.
Yeah, the first further, those are the resolved clauses.
Okay, let's move on. So we're voting on whether to amend the referral motion. Michael Berger is here, maybe?
No.
No, Ben Birnbaum is here?
Yes.
Yes.
And
I vote yes.
You vote yes. Harry Boers,
Yes.
Cliff Brown,
Yes.
Anthony.
Yes. We're voting again after this, right?
Yes, at least
Okay.
one more time.
Okay, on the main motion or whatever it
yes.
is. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
John, well, on the referral motion, yes. John. Is John here?
No, it does not appear.
All right, Catherine,
Yes.
Harry,
No.
David Mark,
Yes.
Neil,
No.
Susan,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Elisa,
Yes.
Alec,
Yes.
Jocelyn,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Fran.
Yes.
Okay, that's it. So that passes. So now we're gonna vote on the amended, favorable action on amended Rosenthal motion to refer warrant article 30. We're gonna go right back to the top of the list. If you're in favor of this referral, yes, yes.
It's not really to refer warrant article 30, it's favorable action on warrant article 30, which is a referral motion.
Yes, thank you. It's confusing.
The subject matter.
on, I mean, I think, no, Marty's motion is a motion to refer the subject matter of warrant Article 30.
Right.
We are recommending referral of warrant Article 30 to the subject matter of warrant Article 30 as per that motion.
As amended.
Yeah.
But it's really
Recommend-
the original warrant article that set up the committee that is being referred. The subject of that is being referred.
Yes, it's recommend referral of subject matter of warrant Article 30.
No, because 30 was about extending the existing committee.
If you read the motion says that the subject matter of warrant Article 30 be referred to a committee forthwith appointed by the select board. All I'm doing is typing the language from the original, from the motion on the table. This is a referral motion of the subject matter of warrant Article 30. If you want to amend that, we have to amend it.
No, so 30 was not this town meeting's submission. It was the previous one.
No.
No.
No,
Well, I'm
that
still
was
confused.
warrant Article
It's
18,
this-
which is
It is
referenced in
this
1.
warrant Article 30, the subject matter of warrant Article 30, and it will be charged as follows. It will review and consider the intent of the November 23rd special town meetings, warrant Article 18, yada, yada, yada. It further shall, as we just adjusted, augment the work of the resulting committee, and it will report by March 1st, 2026. This is a normal referral motion on a warrant article before us.
Dennis, would it be less confusing if people thought of it as a substitute motion for the original warrant Article 30 that's in the warrant?
That
Yes,
helps me.
it would be more confusing. This is a referral motion. Pretend that someone here said advisory committee moves referral of the subject matter of warrant Article 30. The fact that it came from Marty is just an accident.
That's the best thing I've ever been called.
Sorry, it is a referral motion. We are voting on whether to refer the subject matter of warrant. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so. I'm tired, and we are voting on whether we are asking the select board to appoint a committee to review this matter and report back as per the charge. And it was amended by as amended by David Mark. As amended. So if you're in favor of referring the subject matter of warrant Article 30, you're going to vote yes. If you're not in favor of recommending referral, you're going to vote no. And if you vote no, we still have the question of whether to recommend no action on warrant Article 30 or, as it was originally proposed. Ben, do you recommend referral?
Yes.
Harry, do you recommend referral?
Well, I'd like to spend more time discussing what is, but it's getting late, so I'm going to vote yes.
Cliff,
No.
Anthony,
Yes.
John's not here. Catherine,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
David Mark,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Harry,
Can you come back to me?
absolutely. Elisa,
Yes.
Alec,
No.
Jocelyn,
Yes.
Linda,
No.
Mark,
No.
Fran,
Yes.
and Perry.
I guess yes.
All right, so 12 in favor, 4 opposed, and no abstentions. Our recommendation is to refer the subject matter. Perry, I'll follow up with you and Kelly after this to figure out how we get something for the combined report supplement. Harry, we don't have anything on the agenda now except meeting face to face on Tuesday.
And according to the agenda, it's to possibly review previous recommendations, WA 14 on accommodations, WA 15 on accommodations regarding the demo bylaw, and WA 19 regarding sustainable bags.
The reason for warrant article 19 is purely to make sure that it's a belt and suspenders thing. We reported the wrong thing in the combined reports. Not we, but the wrong thing is in the combined reports because of various editing errors. And so it would be nice if we took a vote to make it clear what we were voting on.
Okay, before I go to Mark, I just want to remind people to fill out the doodle poll that Dennis sent regarding our annual picnic. Mark.
And the reason for possibly reconsidering 14 is potentially twofold. One, you may have heard that the select board voted 3-2 in favor of the PPS version, and the developing possible reason is that Dick Benka suggested a few minor changes to the PPS version. And if those are agreed to, then Dick Benka, which they, I think, have been, I'm not 100% sure, Dick Benka will then drop his version, and there will only be one competing version with the original warrant article 14 as amended by petitioner.
Great.
That's just a heads up.
A reminder from Lisa that you should confirm your attendance in person at the high school in order so she can get the correct pizza order. And Lisa, how do you want people to notify you?
I think just an email saying that they'll be in attendance is sufficient.
Thank you.
Any progress on the hybrid idea?
No, it's not possible in that room.
Great. That's a
All
problem.
right, thank you to everyone. We got in all of our updates for the combined reports, except this one, obviously, because we just voted it. And just a reminder for those of you still here, if you were responsible for writing the combined report and delivering it to me, I probably already gave your name to Sandy and Neil and John that you're going to be speaking on behalf of the committee to defend that report. So I will follow up with email soon to make sure that you're all painfully aware of that. I don't want there to be any surprises next week. But other than that, I think we're ready to see you in person next week.
Can I lobby for the Monday picnic? Because on the Thursday, I'm up to Maine to see the puppets.
You can lobby all you want. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.